I'm happy to be here with you. Today, we're going to be talking about scale weight. And the reason I brought up this topic today for this Facebook Live, as well as for this podcast episode, is because I received a number of frantic messages at the beginning of the week for people that were post Super Bowl. So just to put things into context here, is we are week after, so the week after the Super Bowl. And for a lot of our clients here, it was the Phoenix Open as well, or the Waste Management Open. So a lot of people spent a lot of time last week partying. Not too many of our clients per se, but there were a lot of people that woke up on Monday morning saying, what the F just happened when they looked at their scale weight? And so it begs the question is, what did happen? And what is it that the scale weight is actually reflecting when we look at it, if we look at it on a daily basis? And is it actually a good tool to track progress, right? Because you have some people that say, oh, only measure yourself once a week, only measure once a month. You should, and then in fact, we have our clients measure themselves or weigh themselves every single day. Well, why is it that we do that? I will share that with you towards the end of this call in terms of how we can leverage that data in an effective way for most people. And this is generally speaking, this is not the case for every single client, but the reason why we do that, I will share the reason why we do this. So I think it's only relevant to establish, well, on a day-to-day basis, what is our weight a reflection of? And what is it that the scale actually represents? And for most of us, well, for everyone, but pretty typically what we see on the scale is simply a reflection of our behaviors over the past 24 to 48 hours, right? And the reason for this is because, well, what are we actually weighing? Well, we're weighing skeletal mass, we're measuring bone, we're measuring muscle, we're measuring organs, we're measuring connective tissue, we're measuring fluids in the body, both water and blood and so on and so forth. So that's what and fat mass, of course, we're measuring fat mass. And the reality is that our body fat levels, so I think what a lot of people are looking for is when they weigh themselves on a daily basis, say, am I losing fat, or am I gaining fat, or am I gaining muscle, right? And what we know is you can't know those things on a day-to-day basis unless we were doing some complex level of body fat analysis, which frankly, the most accurate and precise way that we can track that is in cadavers, right? You have to be dead to really get a true representation of body fat levels. And even these handheld devices, even the handheld foot devices, even the bioelectrical impedance devices, simply aren't that accurate, and certainly not something that someone's going to do on a daily basis. So when we look at scale weight, we're not getting information around what's happening to our body fat levels. Rather, as I alluded to, is we're getting a reflection of our behaviors in terms of our food consumption, our digestion, our fluid retention, our salt intake, and a number of other factors that influence our weight. So let's talk through those briefly. So that we can wrap our heads around why is it that our scale fluctuates on a daily basis. Now, as I mentioned, I had a number of clients reach out and kind of stress out earlier on in the week, expressing that they needed to reduce their calorie intake, they needed to increase their exercise levels, they were they felt guilt and shame and regret over their behaviors over the weekend, and usually perhaps that was eating more, drinking more. Now let's break that down just a little bit here. It's because what is it that we typically consume, especially when we refer to the Super Bowl, is, we're usually eating more salty, fatty, carby foods, right? As well as alcohol intake, and especially all of those combined. Now, what we know about scale weight, particularly fluid retention, is what are the things that contribute to more fluid retention in the body? Salt, carbs, alcohol, all of those things can contribute to increases in weight by virtue of more fluid retention. And so oftentimes what we see on the scale when you've had a higher carbohydrate meal, a saltier meal, you've drinking more alcohol, is we're going to see an uptick in scale weight. Now, that doesn't mean that you've put on body fat. All it means is you're retaining more fluids, typically retaining more water. And I think it's so important for us to be cognizant of how our weight can fluctuate like that and why it fluctuates based on our behaviors, based on our eating behaviors and the decisions that we make, so that you can be more aware around how you're building out those decisions on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. Now, what are the other things? So we talked about carbs, we talked about salt, we talked about alcohol intake. What else can contribute to increases in scale weight? Well, how about poop? we could just need to take a dump, frankly, and that could be, a pound, could be 2 pounds, who knows? It could be inflammation. For anyone that trains hard, what you may have observed or may not recognized, but observed on the scale, is that after a hard leg training day, you're going to create a lot of inflammation in the tissues, because when we train, we break down muscle tissue. And what does the body do when we create muscle damage? Is it's going to send a lot of different fluids. It's going to build up inflammation in the body so we can drive raw materials to helping expedite the healing process. Just like if you sprain your ankle, what happens? It's going to get swollen with fluid. Okay, so the same idea would be, listen, if we jump on the scale and we're holding a 12-ounce bottle of water, right? It's the same thing. Is imagine that water being distributed around your joints to help facilitate the healing process. And so the uptick in weight is simply coming from that inflammatory process. Now, we also know that stress contributes to inflammation and water retention in the body. And so perhaps you've been in a situation where you have been, maybe sleep's been poor, maybe you've consistently been under eating, and you are frustrated because the scale's not moving. And then, and this happens quite a lot for our clients, is maybe you go on vacation, or maybe we encourage you and guide you to start eating more, particularly carbohydrates, which helps your nervous system start to calm down and helps. And assuming you go on vacation, or we find ways to better manage stress, despite the fact that you may be eating more, all of a sudden we get this flushing effect where your body's actually getting rid of those stored fluids from the stressors that you've been experiencing. And so it's a very complex mechanism, but very eye-opening in terms of understanding all of the various reasons why your body does what it does. So it's a very, very cool process. So I think that that's really, really important for all of us to acknowledge, is look at, there's a myriad of reasons why you are storing excess weight. Mostly that's coming from body fluids. Whether you, and perhaps you even just ate a meal later at night, the night before, maybe you're weighing yourself at a different time of day. And I challenge any of you listening to weigh yourself first thing in the morning, which is what we typically recommend. So we typically recommend wake up, take a leak, get on the scale as close to naked as you're comfortable, and weigh yourself every single day. And you'll get a very good idea of how that weight fluctuates day to day. But if you were to do that, also weigh yourself, just do this once, as you don't want to do this consistently, but weigh yourself at night before going to bed. And it's not uncommon for me to see a 7 or 8 or 9 pound difference from morning to night. Just again, based on fluid retention, based on food, undigested food, stool, inflammation, so on and so forth. And so it begs the question of how accurate is it, or how reliable is it, my friends, for us to be leveraging scale weight as a reliable tracking tool of progress? And the short answer is it's not reliable unless we're zooming out and we're really looking at it over the scale of a long period of time. And so the way that we typically leverage this is really just looking like, one is it's important for you to understand the fluctuations on day to day, right? We believe that it's important for you to understand how your scale weight fluctuates based on, again, your choices from the day before, the past 24 to 48 hours, how your food choices impact scale weight. But really from a coaching standpoint, is what we're looking at is kind of week by week changes, Because anyone that's undergone a weight loss program, you've probably experienced the phenomenon where all of the sudden when you start a program, you're losing weight, right? If you've ever done something like a ketogenic diet, well, you're going to lose a lot of weight very quickly. Why? Well, it's not because there's some magic around keto. It's because you just cut out an entire food group, carbohydrates. And when you eat carbs, you are going to store more fluids in the cells. That's just how the body utilizes carbs, is it drives carbs into the cells, the sugars into the cells, but water goes with that. And so you're naturally going to be storing more water. If you eliminate carbs, well, hello, you're going to lose a lot of water weight. You're going to lose a lot of water weight. And that's why people get so obsessed with all of the quote unquote progress that they see on the scale when they start a low carbohydrate diet. But I hate to tell you this, it's not body fat. It's simply water weight. And so you really need to reinforce that over time with an actual calorie deficit in order to truly see body fat changes. Okay, so that's where it can be very nebulous when you're looking at it day by day. But really, if we extrapolate over time, then we see, okay, well, oftentimes we see this sort of undulating decrease in weight when someone is controlling for calories, when they're managing their exercise and their movement and their hunger and their cravings and all of the things that we help you focus on in our Smart Nutrition Coaching program. But with that said, is weight doesn't always change in a linear fashion. And this is oftentimes the reason, in my opinion, why so many people have a hard time sticking to any one particular diet, is because they'll see the weight trend down for a week, but then it will stagnate, or it might even uptick. And you'll get frustrated and you quit, when in reality, it's never linear. Of all the hundreds, if not thousand clients that we've worked with over the years, there's never a linear trajectory from kind of day by day. Instead, if we zoom out week to month, is really looking at, okay, if we can just plot along the trend line, well, then we'll see that people are consistently losing, assuming they're doing all of the things, assuming they're being consistent with that calorie deficit over time. And that's what we try and help you create by first and foremost getting a better understanding of these tools and how to leverage these tools to your success, so that you don't quit on yourself, so that you don't quit on your diet, and you can truly understand how the human body works, beyond just, well, I eliminated an entire food group, so I should be losing the weight. Okay, so that's really something that I wanted to hit home with around what we're actually seeing on the scale. And, it begs the question, and this is a topic for a different conversation, around when we do see weight change, well, does that mean that we're losing fat? And no, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're losing fat. In fact, for a lot of sedentary people, the Biggest Loser is a great example, is anytime we're losing weight, oftentimes we're also going to see we're going to see reductions in body fat, but we're also going to see reductions in muscle mass. And so that's why we're so adamant that our clients strength train, is because when we're in a deficit, when we're helping you implement the habits that are going to help you manage your calories, by virtue of strength training, you're going to be a lot more likely to maintain lean muscle tissue, and the body's going to be a lot more likely to burn more body fat than burn lean muscle tissue. Because certainly one of the things we see, especially with people over time, is, and especially if they're sedentary, is they'll lose muscle mass and they'll gain more body fat. And even when they do go into a significant calorie deficit, if they're not training, they're going to be losing almost an equal ratio of muscle mass to fat mass. And that's very substantial in terms of how it affects our metabolism. And we've talked a lot about that in the past, so I'm not going to go into those details. And so those are all of the reasons why weight can fluctuate day to day, and how we need to be very cautious about how we're leveraging scale weight. Now, the way that we correlate scale weight is with circumference measurements and with pictures. And that way we know, is like, listen, if the scale's going down and your circumference or measurements are also going down, there's a very good chance that you're losing body fat in conjunction with perhaps a little bit of lean muscle tissue. That's always going to come with the territory when we're in a calorie deficit, but we want to make sure we're minimizing that. Conversely, is if weight is staying the same, and you might be thinking you're doing everything right, right? You're eating all the foods and you're exercising and you're getting enough sleep and you're drinking enough water and you're managing your stress levels, but we're simply not seeing the scale weight change, which happens with a wide variety of clients for a wide variety of reasons. Well, then it's saying, okay, before we jump to any irrational conclusions, what's happening with pictures? What's happening with measurements? How do you feel? How's your sleep quality? How's your digestion? How's your mood? How's your libido? Right? All of these things are going to help clue us in to, are you actually making progress? And just multiple times today, I've already had the conversation around someone has been managing their calories. They've been getting enough protein. They've been exercising hard. Things are improving in terms of hunger and energy and sleep, but the scale weight's not changing. But we're seeing nice changes in terms of circumference measurements. Their waist is getting smaller. Their chest is getting smaller. Their thighs are getting smaller. And so we know that, yeah, they're actually making really good progress. They're losing body fat and perhaps they're gaining some muscle mass along with the territory, which is a beautiful thing and is not that uncommon in the initial stages of training. And so that's why it's so important that we leverage scale weight in conjunction with circumference measurements, pictures, as well as what we call biofeedback, things like hunger, energy, cravings, mood, libido, digestion. Because at the end of the day, I'll tell you very honestly, is there's not many clients that actually care what they see on the scale by the end of our coaching program. Why is that? Is because they have a much better idea around how they're managing their foods on a daily basis. They have improved confidence and clarity around what they need to be doing and how to manage their intake daily in a way that affords them flexibility and freedom in their lifestyle so that they can eat and drink what they want within reason. They have seen that their body composition has substantially changed despite their perception that their weight should have initially been lower. Now, all of a sudden, even if their weight is 10 or 15 pounds heavier than what they thought they needed to be, they are fully aware that doesn't matter because they love the way that they look. They love the way that their clothes fit. They love the compliments that they get inside and out of the gym and at school and wherever, right? And so I think that that's incredibly important. Is we all have these preconceived notions around what we think we should be seeing on the scale and or what we think should be happening in terms of progress. And the reality is there's no right trajectory. There's no normal. There's only the way that works best for you with your lifestyle, with your food preferences, with your commitment and readiness for change, and with the level of support that you have. And so ultimately is we need to be cautious about how we interpret scale weight and simply looking at it as one of many tools to help us determine an overall level of progress that we're making, right? But the one thing, well, two things I should say that we know very clearly about scale weight is one, from a day-to-day basis, it tells us nothing about body fat change. That's very, very important. I keep bringing that up. It tells us nothing about body fat change. So for you to judge yourself on a day-to-day basis or even a week-by-week basis by some number that you see on the scale without acknowledging your previous behaviors is doing yourself a massive injustice. And two, is there's no number that you could see on the scale that's as detrimental to your health and well-being as feeling ashamed of what you see. Right? If we stressing about the number day to day is worse than the foods that you consume to contribute to that number. And instead, we just need to understand that scale weight is simply a reflection of the choices you made. And it's nothing more than a tool to help you establish awareness and accountability so that you guys can continue to make better choices in the future. And so I think it's important to keep a realistic perception of that. I'm going to end it at that. So I hope this has been helpful for you. Again, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Ben Brown. I'm the owner of BSL Nutrition. We are a nutrition and fitness coaching company, and we believe that your health determines your freedom. In this particular case, scale weight is simply one of many, many tools that you can leverage to help you make progress. But if you're not looking at it over the broad context, perhaps it's something that's only pushing you into a deeper hole. And so if this is something that you find interesting, you find valuable, if it's something that you feel like you want help with, you can obviously reach out to us. Just shoot me a message here, or you can click the link in the show notes. Again, if this has been helpful for you, give us a thumbs up, give us a heart, share this with someone that you think could find value. As always, much love and appreciate you guys. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. I'll catch up with you soon.